Hello and welcome to The Drum Show, powered by Disruptive Live. I'm Stephen Lepitak, editor of The Drum. With January already nearly at an end and 2020 well and truly in full swing, we're going to talk about some of the topics coming up this year that will impact advertising and marketers. With me to discuss some of what we can expect from the year ahead is Kelly Engstrom, Brand and Demand Generation Communications Director at EE, Nick Farnhill, Chief Executive of Publicis Poke, and Angus MacKinnon, Group Creative Director at Publicis Poke. Why are your job titles so long? Before we look into the future, CES, the annual technology trade show, has come and gone already, and the Drum was on the ground to check out the upcoming innovations on show. Here's a little look at one of the films we created while the team was in Las Vegas.
The Drum is here at CES, the giant consumer electronics show here in Las Vegas, Nevada. With over 4,500 exhibitors and 175,000 attendees representing over 160 countries, this is the biggest show in the world. It's also a place where some of the most important technology is unveiled, from upstart brands to heritage brands in healthcare, retail, automotive, high-tech, and much more. The Drum chatted with a group of brands, companies, and exhibitors to find out what the latest and greatest is in tech and how it just might change the world.
That film will run next week on the Drum website with interviews from companies such as Coca-Cola, ASICS, Impossible Foods and SAP. Now, back to my guest for this week. First of all, it's the end of January. When do you think we should stop saying Happy New Year to each other? Because that drives me daft. Do you think there's an etiquette to it?
Yeah, it's a nice way just in January to give someone a hug, greet them, be happy.
But you always hug people when you greet them.
Well, end of January.
End of January, a full month.
I think we're done.
I think we're done.
So. Yeah.
But when's the cut-off date?
Keep going.
Just keep going.
Next year, all the way.
We're huggers.
Don't be so miserable.
We're huggers, Steve. You're just a dour
We're huggers.
Scottish.
We've started with that already. Right, okay, you lot. So we're going to talk about future predictions for 2020, and I'm keen to hear what you guys think is going to come up. But first of all, we've just shown a clip from what we did at CES. Did you guys see anything useful come out of CES? There's always a debate. Does any useful technology come out of that show? Did you guys spot anything?
It's a bit, yeah, you're right. I'm a bit allergic sometimes to CES because there's only so many sort of 8K ultra high definition screens that automatically rotate from landscape to portrait that you need in your life. But there's a lot. It was nice this year because I think one of the things that came out of it is how many new companies were going into it. So it's like any company can be a tech business. You had John Deere in there, Unilever, P&G, you had Impossible Foods within their Impossible Pork products. And so there was that, I suppose, expanse, this sort of growing area or areas that CES now services. But the other part that I think we find interesting and probably have a bit of, a great interest in and influence over is smart homes, smart cities, wearables, and 5G. And I think CES this year you could see every component in a 5G ecosystem coming to life, whether it be mobility solutions, entertainment solutions, service, home I've mentioned. So that was fascinating to sort of see it all pieced together. And I think this year, and another interesting point for people going into the 20s is it's a brand new decade. And so you have the 1990s with personal computing as the interface, the platform for computing. You have 2000s, which is the web. You have 2010s, which is mobile. And then you have the 20s. And that is very much more about extended reality, augmented reality, wearables. And 5G is the thing that is going to connect and make that a reality, right?
Yeah, I mean, exactly as Nick said, we're moving into a world where everything is going to be connected. The table, the clothes we wear, the glasses we use, absolutely everything's going to be connected, and so 5G is the key to make that happen. The more things that we're connecting to the networks and the more people using those multiple gadgets or devices, it's the absolute reason that 5G exists. It's to give that capacity benefit and make multiple things and people connect at one time. So it's super exciting to see that stuff coming out of CES because it's fundamentally all driven by the 5G networks that we're building.
Yeah, it seems as I guess this is what we're going to probably talk about quite a bit here, is the potential of 5G could just, it will revolutionise. But I've heard skeptics say that we're probably overstating things a bit. Just how big a change is it going to make?
The thing to think about is the 5G that we have today is very different to the 5G that we'll see in 4 years' time. And that was exactly the case with 4G. When we launched that, it was a developing story and it grew over the years. The 4G that you use today is very different to the one that was launched all those years ago. So I do think that 5G is going to absolutely revolutionise everything at a point. And I think that's the key for marketers and creativity, is that we've got to find a way to tell that story in a relevant way, because we want people to get on board with it now, today, not based on what's going to happen in 5-10 years' time. And that can be quite a scary thing, to think that we're going to have driverless cars everywhere and robots flying in and your whole world's going to be talking to you through all these different voices. And that's a concept that people can't get their heads around at the moment. So for me, that's the job that advertisers have to do, is to find a really interesting, engaging way to tell what 5G can do for you right now and inspire you about the future, but in an exciting way, not a scary way.
So what do you guys think advertisers will be able to do that we weren't able to do before?
Yeah, I was just going to build on that one. In a lot of ways, 5G fulfills the expectations everybody had of the internet on the move 5 years ago when 4G came out. It's going to deliver all the experiences that we all really wanted to happen and found maybe occasionally lacking. So like incredibly fast, high definition video. Everybody wants that. And if you ask anybody what they're excited about with 5G, that's probably the first thing that they think about. That's going to happen. So it's going to deliver that, but it's going to deliver that in all the places that we actually need it, where there are lots of big crowds, we're on the move. And I guess the next thing is just like really immersive experiences, the ability to do a lot more with augmented reality and virtual reality and esports on the move. That's the kind of next big exciting thing. And these are all not distant future things. These are things that people can get excited about right now. And I think, as Kel says, that's the stuff we're trying to get people excited about, not the driverless cars and the Internet of Things of the medium future.
And that's the point. It's you can very easily, or some people may get into sort of have a feeling that it's like a Gillette razor with another blade on it. 4G, 5G, it's only faster, and it's not. It's, as Kelly was alluding to, 5G is about capacity. 5G is about able to connect far more than we ever could or ever even dreamed of. So everything that was sort of looking around us of value, like you said, it could be your clothing, it could be the glasses. Yeah. The glasses that were definitely ahead of the curve, let's say, but they're starting to come back. You have a relationship with a brand in that space. Yep. You can start to see how you could lay over useful layers to people's lives, whether it's navigation, whether it's identifying people, whether it's gaming. That stuff will start to appear. But we were talking about this, you're still maybe 2, 3, 4 years out. Even this year, you're not going to see the sort of key handsets till September, October.
Yeah. I think for me, this year's the year 5G will go mass market. There's definitely going to be some major device launches this year, hopefully, that come to market that see it move into those mass numbers. But I think the other thing for me about this year is, I think augmented reality and wearables probably are key things for people to think about this year. And they go hand in hand, really. So wearable technology, glasses, we've seen them previously from suppliers. Maybe that was a bit ahead of the curve. But this year, I definitely think that's going to come to the forefront, because 5G can let augmented reality be a reality for you. So whether that's through gaming, or you're just going to add that onto your content layers that you're watching whilst you're commuting, or any one of the number of those things, that's going to be part of your everyday life by the end of the year, really. Because think of 5G as an extra motorway lane. It's an extra network, which just means whenever there's loads of people on it, you can still do the most immersive experiences that take a lot from the network, but in the busiest of places. So I think it's just going to broaden it out around what you can do and make those things mass market, whereas previously you could use them, but maybe only a few people could use them, and there weren't really the hardware to allow you to do it in your everyday life.
So are you predicting the return of Google Glass? Will it finally take off? Do any of us really want
glasses?
it?
Of glasses.
Just glasses.
Glasses, yeah.
I think, now is the time for it. It was too early. The other thing to tell you about wearables is because 5G enables so much kind of heavy processing power up in the cloud, wearables are going to get much more wearable. They'll be smaller, they'll be lighter, they'll be cheaper, because all that processing doesn't happen in the device, which means you free up the space to include it in incorporating clothing, make it less visible, put all the space into improved battery life. So I think it's the year that wearables will just be more wearable, more accessible financially and physically.
I think as well, it's the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality and mixed reality. And mixed reality is really going to be the thing that will push you forward. And that's why the glasses need to evolve, because we've already seen the movement from full-on virtual reality where you're consumed within that world, whereas mixed reality is going to mean that glasses, just like the ones I'm wearing right now, will be able to give you mixed and augmented reality whenever you need it. Soon contact lenses will be at that point as well. So I think exactly as Gus is saying, they're going to become much more mainstream, much more desirable just through their appearance than they have been before. And that's a big thing into making it mass market, what it looks like as well as what it does.
But your question about what it means for marketeers is interesting, because you have this, let's stick with wearables. And particularly Gus's point about this, these lighter weight products, they could be woven like Levi's and Google Project into the jacket. They could be just something quite discreet in glasses or whatever it may be. But you've got this challenge where you're moving from, this supercomputer that you've got in your pocket, which you're interacting with here, to something that's going to be more voice-driven. It's something that's going to be more gesture-driven.
Gestures, yeah.
And so, marketeers have to understand what that non-visual interface is and how audiences, whoever they are and who they're talking to, are going to be able to interact with them. So, what is, and this is slightly, it's a conversation that's been going on for some time, but what is your personality as a brand in that space? What is your voice? What is your virtual personality? Whether that's something you can see, like some of the virtual influencers you're seeing in Instagram, or it's just something you hear, so it's a voice you interact with. How do you, if it's gestures, whether it's in gaming, whether it's service, whether it's in the car, how's that sort of coming to life? And marketeers need an understanding about that new dimension to how a consumer, audiences will interface with their business and ther brands.
We've been talking about voice for a few years now, and we're seeing a few brands kind of really try and embrace it, but how much further do we need to go before that becomes just the norm of how we interact with technology?
We're still pretty much there, aren't we? Is it? I mean, most people have got voice assistants in their home and baked into domestic life now.
Right.
It's kind of almost as ubiquitous as a microwave in people's kitchen.
But how are you confident in the street to start talking to no one?
I mean, Google Assistant is pretty good. That's got to be the benchmark of it, right? Of smart voice tech. It's not. I don't use it very much for directions, so I'm not sure I totally rely on it.
And out and about, whether you're using it or you're comfortable with it in your home, but maybe not out and about. Exactly. I think in the home, the key thing is how they're going to interact together. How are they all talking to each other? That's going to be the key that moves that forward.
So that came out at CES. There's a lot of invisible things that were coming out of CES rather than the sort of visible, the tech and all the gadgets. There was a sort of an underlying agenda about standards and how standards need to come closer together. So if you do have, you've got Nest products, you've got Echo, you've got all of this stuff, and whether the living area or the house, you've got all of these interoperable pieces of kit which are only going to end up as landfill. So you've got a whole bunch of stuff going on there in terms of sustainability and poor creation of tech without sort of the environment and the user in mind. But what came through in some of the press from CES was this a seemingly more open behaviour in terms of how Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft were starting to think about interoperability and starting to think about common standards. So if you do have a product at home which is a voice assistant, it may be able to very easily link with a different manufacturers and a different OS TV or something like that. And that has to happen. And if it's too hacky at the moment, the world of home automation, the world of smart homes, it's a hacky space unless you invest very, very heavily into some sort of bespoke products. That's the interesting part. And I think next year you've got interoperability, and next year it'll move into privacy. And there was no talk of privacy at CES at all. And if we're talking about all of this type of stuff, the footprint, the data trail that we're all leaving behind us as users of this kit is horrendous. And so we've got to have, or manufacturers have to have a stance in terms of what the privacy position is. And also there's a conversation around, and you guys will be involved in it, data minimization. So what is the smallest amount of data that you as a consumer would share if you're interacting with a certain product, as opposed to just spewing out everything that you sort of leave in your interaction with that particular product. That's probably something EE are close to. Definitely.
I mean, everyone has to be worried about that, I think, moving forward. But I think the problem is you're forcing consumers into individual decisions at the moment within the household, at home especially. What Nick's saying about interoperability is completely where we're at the minute, is working with all of our partners to make sure that we're all linking in together, because you just can't have devices that just work on one network or that won't talk to each other. Otherwise consumers just won't buy into that, and it can't become mass market and a daily part of their routine. So I think that's the biggest thing coming out of that for me.
What would be your advice then for other brands who either are or aren't yet looking at this technology? How should they start to think about what's going to come down the line?
I mean, I think the other thing we've got to think about with 5G specifically is around the network rollout. This is playing alongside the regional rollout as it comes. So this isn't all over the country yet. So you do have to be mindful of that and talk to people in a way that resonates with them on that basis. So there's a job to be done around making 5G feel mass market and educating everyone on the benefits. But there's a time and a place for that for certain audiences when it comes to them, and then for other audiences, you're buying into products that are going to last a lifetime. They're quite, they're expensive gadgets, or they're 24-month contracts. You need to be thinking about where your life's going to be within that lifespan of the products you're buying. So there's a certain element of future proofing, I guess, what you're buying. So there's an inspirational element around what 5G is going to do for you within that 24-month period, and then what it can do for you right now. So for me, the biggest thing with all of this is around user cases. I think this is the global issue with 5G at the minute, is there isn't a universal, clear, single-minded benefit on what 5G does for you, apart from capacity. When we launched 4G, instantly the speeds doubled, and therefore apps such as Netflix or YouTube worked twice as well because you didn't have buffering. So your videos were streaming freely and you didn't have to worry about any of that. Apps just don't need the speed that 5G gives them at the minute. What they do need is to be able to work in really busy places, but you're not always in a really busy place. So the trick with 5G and for advertising and creative is finding relevant stories and user cases, and that puts a real emphasis on storytelling for me, because you have to come up with the scenarios or the storytelling that really inspires them as to, it's a good thing to have this. If you're going to buy a gadget or a phone, you should be putting it on 5G for the times where you need it, and that this is rolling out and becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger part of your lives. But finding those user cases is tough, and I don't think I've seen that really delivered in any market globally yet. So it's everyone looking for the same story, really. And so I think storytelling is the real thing that I would advise anyone getting into this area to focus on.
Yeah, and I mean, we keep coming back to every few years we talk about VR will finally come of age. Will this help VR become mass adopted? I always have my doubts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it slightly goes back to some of the hardware conversations we were having a little bit earlier, making the hardware smaller, more accessible, untethered. Strapping a big helmet on your head is doesn't feel good. It cuts you off from the world around you and makes you look weird. You feel very self-conscious when you're using those things. That sort of stuff will melt away as hardware becomes more comfortable and accessible. But things like proper kind of peer-to-peer interaction in virtual worlds will be is one of the kind of big 5G breakthroughs, the ability to interact with other people in virtual spaces in perfect real time, and I think that could provide a bit of a kind of mass market breakthrough.
Yeah. The VR
it's less of a sort of isolating experience, and more can be much more communal.
I think it's AR though that is going to be the thing that really takes off this year, because that's the mobile part. Virtual reality is much more about fixed, maybe being at home and being surrounded in that. AR, that can go into so many areas as well, whether that's education or it's gaming. There's massive potential within gaming for AR, and mass market gaming events in Hyde Park or wherever, that you can encourage kids to get out and, you know, not be just tied to their bedroom and their consoles at home, but really getting out and having an immersive experience with all of their mates out and about. I think 5G will let AR become for everyone, and just the possibilities and the different areas that it can take you into. I definitely see this being a year for AR for sure.
But the VR side of it, we always sort of focus in on what someone may, you know, how they may use it at home, and it always sort of ends up in a sort of gaming place sometimes. And as Gus says, you do feel self-conscious. It's quite isolating. But when you look at it in more of a business context or a health context, and you sort of see how headsets are being used now to help treat people with a fear of heights. Help people train. You see it used in hospitals, and you can have remote surgery taking place. We're working on projects at the moment where we're using it for training members of staff, and it's, you know, it's a very specific use case, but to a really very wide audience. And so it may not start to play out in the way that we all imagined it might play out, gaming at home or trying to speak to friends across the world and stuff like that. But there are some many really valid and very valued use cases that are definitely going to are already being practiced and being used.
Yeah, I think people are talking about it as a kind of internet of skills, you know, more than an internet of things. You know, ability to match peers up with different skill sets, so you can be trained and you know, cured. Yeah, it's a kind of skill. It could provide a great skills matchup.
And what about live events then? Because surely the access to not only interact with each other, but actually watch events not on television, but actually
be front row at Glastonbury.
immersive. Is that going to take off all the more? Do you think? I mean, I don't think it really has properly yet.
No, I think you're right. That's probably one of the fundamental benefits of 5G. Is it can transport you and let you be somewhere you're not. So, you know, that brings huge stories that you can talk to people about, whether you can't get a ticket to a gig or you can't physically travel there, or for any number of reasons that you can't be there. But not only can you view that content without any issues because of the extra network capacity that 5G can bring you, but we can add layers onto that. So there can be, you know, AR in there, additional content, you know, watching sporting events while there's live stats or replays that you can see instantaneously wherever you are. That's all possible with 5G. So I think the entertainment and events sector is absolutely prime for 5G. It's a great user case for it.
You sort of see the stuff that came out several years ago from the Levi Stadium in San Francisco. You know, that at the time was the most connected stadium. We've got the most connected stadium now. But you know, the experience was you can be sitting at your seat, you can be getting replays of the game on your mobile phone, you can be ordering food and drinks to your seat, all of that type of stuff. That's the sort of base layer, sort of table stakes in the experience, but it's just that how you take it further and how you know, even entertain people during halftime breaks and stuff like that.
Does this mean when there's so much advertising and messaging out there, there's going to be even more coming the consumer's way?
Even more, even better, even more integrated.
Right.
Useful.
Yeah, I think it just means there's, again, probably more responsibility on us to make sure that it is properly entertaining and properly integrated into whichever area you're putting that message out in. It's probably going to mean even more emphasis on that, I think.
But it's a you know, back to your marketeers and the what we should be thinking of and what we should be aware of. There is a greater need and focus than ever on the experience that you're responsible for. And so, you know, if it is a connected stadium and a brand is involved, obviously that sponsorship is a form of advertising. You're able to communicate a message and values about your brand and appeal to someone, but the experience you're offering them needs to be valuable in that particular context. So if you're putting someone in the front row, if you're allowing them to replay a goal that has just been scored, you're going to take away from that experience something very positive, if it's right for you, about that brand. And so having an awareness about how to, you know, take that experience to you know, quite a creative, quite an interesting space, something that you wouldn't have thought of. That's where the AR and the extended reality really comes into play. That's what brands should really start to think about. But back to use cases, it's very easy to fall into a trap that you just end up in a sort of bleeding edge tech, which really isn't going to last.
I think that's how you'll start to see creativity separate into the good and the bad. I think everyone should now be looking at every advertisement as an opportunity to bring digital communications in there. So interactivity and immersion in terms of your comms should be at the heart of every brief you're doing now. An outdoor static poster, a press ad, they can all provide you with an immersive experience, because all your devices are connected. So, you know, logos, copy, words, images, they all provide an opportunity for pop-up AR experiences. So for me, for advertisers, it's an opportunity to surprise and delight and actually make people fall back in love with advertising a little bit. You know, we've been at that point for a while where there's so much of it and we're used to seeing it. So this could change it up a little bit, I think, and maybe separate the good from the bad a little bit. And, you know, obviously we all want to be in that good camp. So certainly for my teams, I'm pushing us to always think about what are the added opportunities to surprise and delight people. Give extra content, extra messages that are actually engaging. They can go alongside the traditional messages that that form part of our overall plans. But I think it's a good opportunity. You just got to embrace it and be a bit more brave with your creative, I think.
I'm looking forward to see how you integrate Kevin Bacon into all of this as well then. What's
Kevin
he gonna
Bacon's
be up to?
avatar, expect to see him anytime soon.
Right.
Digital Kevin everywhere in your life.
I feel like I see him everywhere already.
Most connected person.
Just final question to you then, as a creative, what is exciting around this? What can other creatives go, yes, I can't wait for this?
Well, like any technology, it just opens up opportunities. You know, it's the technology on its own isn't exciting. It's what it kind of allows you to do. We've talked a lot about AR and VR. I'm really excited about content and what 5G will open up in terms of new content platforms. So we know that the number one thing people want from it is high quality content. There's already a kind of like an explosion of subscription-based streaming services that you can get on the move. Those will be able to full their absolute maximum potential now with 5G, particularly in busy places. But there are also new services coming out that are completely designed around the mobile experience. Apps like Quibi, short form. Subscription-based streaming that is entirely designed for mobile, and that'll be high-quality content with Hollywood-style budget. You've got Steven Spielberg, directing episodes on it. So creatively, I'm really excited to see a kind of like the next generation of content, and as a creative, that's a massively exciting space to play.
This is the next generation of content. You're part of it already.
There you go.
Especially with that desk toy.
You just do not try and steal that on the way out.
Don't worry.
Leave it alone. Well, thank you guys. Welcome to the Roaring 20s, I guess. How exciting.
Thank you very much.
So, just to finish off, we have another video project that I wanted to share with you this week. With the February issue of the Drum magazine now on desks, we created a mini documentary around a virtual influencer that we developed. Meet Flo.
Influence is big business. Instagrammers, YouTubers and TikTokers are now considered an essential part of the marketing mix. But now, some marketers want to take the human out of the equation and create so-called virtual influencers. They behave just like regular influencers. They share selfies, they monologue to camera, they create sponsored content. But their images are computer generated and their words are pre-programmed. To find out more, we've come to the Virtual Influencer Agency in London, where they've created a virtual influencer just for us.
And that film can be viewed on the Drum website in full now. And more information on the making of it can be found in the latest issue of the magazine, exploring the role of influencers and playing in the marketing industry around the world. Check that out now. And that's another episode of The Drum Show, the first of the year. Thank you to my guests for joining us, Kelly, Nick, Angus. Take care.